also worked. So if people derive from that those impressions, then that was never, ever my intention. And that is why I never mentioned any tribe or any group of people. I stuck to regional context, and there was a basis for it. And that is where it stands. But if it's for those who are offended, I withdraw the statement if they take offense with it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, it was just so that we can agree, but I'll start with the chairman.
Can I say that the aspect of the statement which I think is important and well is that I'm being nominated, or I've been nominated for the whole of Ghana, and I did say it even in the statement. I represent every Ghanaian if I am given the nod by this House to represent the whole of Ghana. And any other part of the statement which creates some ambiguity or difficulty in this matter, I'm happy to withdraw. And I plead the indulgence of this august House. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I think he's done well to dissociate himself. That is the platform I wanted to create. My question, the chairman has to allow you.
No, yeah, wait.
Is that follow up? Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I have two simple questions. I realize that the Chief Executive of Konfanochi Teaching Hospital is right behind you. And I happen, somewhere behind you. And he's my senior colleague. He's my senior colleague, both in the medical school and in the field of practice. An accomplished surgeon he is. That is not the issue. The appointments of hospital administrators, not chief administrators. He is a chief administrator. That's not him. I happened to have spoken against it, that a letter emanated from the Chief of Staff's office appointing a hospital administrator, which was a dangerous precedent. And it happened in Konfanochi. Would you assure this House that when you become the minister, you provide us with the information of all chief executives in government hospitals per regions and where those chief executives hail from?
I'm slightly at a loss as to how to answer. I'm slightly at a loss as to how to answer the question. I believe if I'm there and a written request is made, which is in order and is in the right process and procedure, which I do not know as I sit here in terms of the appointments of such directors, I don't want to say what I will do or not do when I don't know the process. But I know that this august House has the power to request information at any given time, which we all try to comply with in the ministries. And therefore, if the request there's no issue with the request, yes, I promise I will comply with it.
Sir,
but I cannot say
my question was simple. My question was simple. When a member requests for information, you say you are going to give it or not. Mr. Segbefia, you are not here to tell me whether my questions are right or wrong. Please,
I apologize.
Let me ask my question. My question was so simple. I said, when you become Minister of Health, if or when, would you provide me with all the heads of government hospitals per the various regions? Would you? When a member decides to solicit for information, it's not only a written question to you, it includes questions I'm asking now because you're under oath. You don't need to get worked up on these things.
I'm not in the least.
So answer my question.
I will. Can I
Member, please hold on. Don't forget that there's a procedure for tabling questions. So if you comply with the procedure, why not? You'll be under an obligation to
Mr. Chair, you are right. There is a procedure. It includes me asking questions now, directly. And I've asked a question as simple as, would you give me that? Tell me no.
If you go through the proper procedure.
It is including this. My questions here are proper. My questions are proper.
You
Mr.
see,
Chairman.
he's not yet in the seat, don't forget. So how can he give you answers to questions pertaining to the ministry when he's not yet there? Very well. If you qualified it, fine. Okay, honorable nominee, please.
Mr. Chairman, I believe I've answered the question and I said yes. That's what I
Mr. Chair, oh, I've asked only one question. What?
No, he has two. Yes, he has two. He has two. Two each. Yes, honorable. Yes. Honorable Atachia, it's your turn.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to do a follow-up, but you directed that I should preface my follow-up with my substantive question. So I just want to ask the follow-up because it flowed from what he said. Oh, please, I crave your indulgence.
Order. Honorable Atachia, you have the floor.
Yes, Mr. Segbefia, congratulations. I was not too happy with the answer you gave to Honorable Napo's interrogation relating to the statement attributed to you in the Volta region. And you said if that was the case, you want to withdraw some aspect or not. I thought you would say you made the statement or you didn't make the statement. But if you didn't make the statement, why withdraw? I was a bit confused. That's.
The reason I couched my statement in that regard was it was an extempo statement. I didn't have a written document. So it's not like I can have a speech and I'm saying that every word that has been said there is verbatim. That is the reason why I couched it that way. Thank you.
So it was not a written speech. Okay then. My first question is this. My first question is this. Mr. Chairman, you should protect me from the paparazzis.
Please go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Segbefia, I heard you say that the problems bedeviling the national insurance scheme is a result of the expansion of the scheme.
The expansion is one of the.
But
one of the
I'm
reasons.
reliably informed that the real problem why the national service scheme is not giving. I'm sorry, the national health insurance scheme is not giving us the benefit we want to have is because half the time the levies, which are statutorily, are diverted and released as and when the government pleases. Are you aware of this situation?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware of this situation.
Do you know, or you do not know, that, I'm coming with, Mr. Chairman, these guys are, do you know that insofar as the government will want to divert the monies intended for the national insurance scheme and will not apply those revenues directly to the scheme, the system will suffer? That's the question.
If monies are supposed to be allocated directly to a particular fund, and the money doesn't arrive there, yes, there will be difficulties, but I don't know that that is the case. And I believe, and I stand to be corrected, that these monies are paid into, or some of these monies go into the consolidated fund, which is the general pot. If that is the case, then it then becomes an accountancy issue as to what goes where and how. But I'm not in a position to comment beyond that.
As a lawyer, you know that when statutory funds are supposed to be applied for a certain purpose and they are diverted, that is a clear-cut case of statutory infraction, the government disrespecting the law. Is that not so?
I'm aware that if there are statutory requirements of certain payments to be made to anybody, then the statute should be followed and that is what should happen. But as I said, I'm not aware that any such thing is happening. And in actual fact, if you are in the ministry itself, unless you are diverting the funds after it has been given to you, you would have no control of how the funds come to you. That is a matter, I believe, for the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning.
Finally.
No, Honorable Member, you've exhausted your number of questions. Yes, Honorable Mrs. Azuma Mensah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would also like to take this opportunity to congratulate you, Honorable Alex Segbefia, Percival. I've only got one question. About 2 years ago, we passed the Health Institutions and Facilities Regulatory Act. And as of now, we don't even know if the board is in place. And as you know, we need to implement this act to make sure whatever each of the institutions or the health facilities they do are in place. Now, you are going to be the substantive minister once we give you the nod. I wonder what you think you will do to facilitate and expedite action to make sure the authority is in place so that we can implement the act. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not aware of this particular act. Obviously, it's an important one and close to the honorable member's heart. But when acts are passed, it's important that they are implemented. And so when, if I am given confirmation by this honorable house, I will look into it, find out exactly what it is we are supposed to be doing. Also, find out why we haven't been doing it. Actually, this is the main crux of it. What has kept us back, and try and rectify it, immediately bring it into force. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Ileche.
Thank you very much. Why are you looking at me?
Is the question there?
Yeah, I'm looking at the question. First of all, let me add my voice as chair of the committee that is going to work with you if you become minister. Of congratulations. Now, the question I have for you is that over the years, every minister has tried to complete projects that were started so that we have some finality to certain health projects. One of them is the Bekwai Municipal Hospital. Yeah. I don't know what briefs you were given by the ministry for this exercise, but will you get a proper appreciation of the status of these projects and make efforts to get resources to complete them, particularly that project?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know that efforts have been made already within that ministry, which are far advanced to ensure that the funding for the completion of that project, along with the completion of the maternity unit in Kumasi Hospital, are being worked on fruition and is far advanced. And I intend that if I'm given the nod, I will definitely ensure and facilitate that this takes place as soon as possible. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, recently the committee's attention was drawn to a circular creating 4 more directorates in the Ministry of Health. Now, the PNDC law, which establishes the civil service, has specific ways of doing this. I don't know whether you are aware of these new directives, but can you tell this committee that when you become minister, proper procedures will be followed in creating directorates?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, when I become minister, if I'm given the nod by this august house, I will try and ensure that the proper processes and procedures are followed when directories are to be completed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, in presenting the message on the state of the nation for 2014, the President indicated to the nation that there will be a pay cut from his appointees to put up some chip compounds. Later in the course of that year, last year, the Minister for Finance appeared before the House and answered questions and told us how much had been realized. As of now, we are not told which sites or locations, the locations where those chip compounds are being put up. If you are giving the nod, how are you going to follow through this policy statement of the President to ensure that the people of Ghana get to know that it's been done?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The issue of chips compound is very close to the current government heart. It's a policy that is the bedrock of the whole health service issues that pertain to this country. And if I'm given the nod, one of the main things that I will have to continue with, which has been started by my predecessor, is to totally finalize and begin the construction work of the chips compound right across the country. There is the need for regional balance, especially since you have some donor countries already building some chip compounds in the country. We have already built a good number in the first term of this government, and therefore, once we look at the spread across the country, it will be clearly demarcated, and no doubt, I'm sure honorable members of this House will be keeping a keen eye because it will affect many of their constituencies. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, by way of interest, may I know from the Minister Designate, how much of your own emolument is set aside for that purpose?
I believe it's about, from our salaries, I believe 10% is taken every month. And from the day that I became the Deputy Minister of Defense, I noticed the dip in my salary.
How much does it translate to? How much does it translate to?
Because I
Honorable
was
Minority, I think that will be going too far. I think that will be going too far.
I can't really tell.
Yes, do you have any more questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, as somebody coming from the Brunga-Havo region, I always feel sorry when I visit the regional hospital in Sunyani because there are so many things that the hospital is lacking, including even strangers. Many things, basic logistics that the hospital requires for effective work. They don't have it. And the nurses and the doctors are always complaining. When you become the minister, what assurance do you give us that not only for the regional hospital in Sunyani or the district hospitals in Brunga-Havo, but for the whole of the country, that logistics will be made available to all hospitals for them to work effectively because the life of our people is dear to us?
Yes, honorable nominee.
I believe that there is a scheme that has has been rolled out over a number of years where all the health centers, regional hospitals and district hospitals have been re-equipped with equipment. And equipment, when I'm talking here now, fixed equipment, new fixed equipment, most hospitals, district hospitals, and even health centers have benefited largely from this project, which ran into a huge amount of millions. And that has been dealt with. However, in terms of the revolving infrastructure, if I can put it that way, syringes, drugs, etc., the whole issue of the supply chain with regard to items like that is a factor that I intend to continue with or look at and come up with a completely new process, if possible, because of what has happened with the central medical stores. We have to look at that as an opportunity now to look at the whole systems and decide how we are going to deal with supply chain, not only for drugs, but for other infrastructural equipment like syringes, gloves, etc.
Very honorable member for Bekwai.
Thank you. Honorable Deputy Minister, have you remarked anywhere that the President has nominated an Asante to the Defense Ministry and he's going to stage a coup?
Well, honorable member, I'm not too sure if we can base questions on speculations and things like that, you know. Very well, honorable member, honorable nominee.
No.
That's reassuring. But I'm interested in the health service delivery. Doctors, in the past 1 year or more, have consistently been in the news and actually giving a date by which they would resign from the public service. It is to do with their conditions of service. Are you well briefed about that? And what would you recommend, what actions to end these agitations of doctors in particular forever?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First and foremost, I would indicate that the issue with the doctors, there is a committee that has been working to deal with that particular issue. And they are waiting for the full recommendations from that committee to do with their service conditions. And so it's not something that has been left aside and not being looked at. It's being looked at. They are waiting for the report to come through for it to then be, and I'm aware that the Honorable Minister of Employment, who is present here, is part and parcel of that particular activity. Once the committee puts it together, I believe it will be taken to his desk, where I believe once he's satisfied with the content, it will be signed. So it's something that is being looked at and is being dealt with. However, I must add that because of the nature of the previous question, for my own benefit, I have never heard this before. So I would like some clarity as to where that came from, because I'm actually in shock. I don't know where it has come from. So I just wanted some clarity as to. Yes. I'm not saying open it. I'm saying I don't understand.
Very well. Honorable member, honorable nominee, I don't think we'll want to go into that here. You've given your answer and we're moving on. Yes, so Honorable Titus Glover.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Alex, congratulations.
Yes, Honorable. Thank you very much.
I want to take you through memory lane. Down memory lane. From Anyako to Tama. The president recently in Botswana made a statement using the metaphor, describing himself as a dead goat. In other words, he has become impervious to strikes and demonstrations. You are going to a ministry that has a high labor agitations, i.e. doctors, pharmacists, nurses, lab technicians, et al. How prepared are you with these industrial actions? And the fact that the president says that he's not going to budge to pressures from the labor front. With these coming, I mean, how are you going to manage this with a statement made by the president?
Honourable Member, I prefer that you restrict your question to what he will do in the ministry, as much as possible.
That's what I said.
Yes, what he will do, but talking about dead goat and all of that.
It came from here. It came from here. Mr. Chairman, Alex, please help us.
I think that,
Yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I think that the issue of agitation invariably tends to be cross-sectorial. In situations like this, the bottom line is that you need to actually dialogue off-the-cuff statements without actually understanding the history or the basis for which things have come about are not to be encouraged. And therefore, safe to say that I will be liaising constantly with the ministers whose sectors they fall under, along with my ministry, if I am given the nod, means that we would then be able to come to some form of acceptable compromise with regard to the issues of strikes. It is a right that is enshrined in our Constitution. And if people are aggrieved about something and they wish to demonstrate, so long as they follow the right process, they are allowed to do so. But it's important that the right process is followed, and it's also important that government has a listening ear, which I hope when I get to the ministry, I will do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, the immediate past Health Minister, Dr. Ajima Mensah, I asked him the same question with regards to the Tema Junior Hospital that was given to the people of Tema by Parkinson Howards, the contractor who fixed the Tema port. It is a referral hospital, but unfortunately, it has become a death trap. No surgical theater. They don't have water in the hospital. In fact, we need a total holistic upgrading of the Tema General Hospital. When you get the nod, what assurance are you giving the people of Tema, the surrounding towns, Boom, Ningo, Pramprang, Ada, and all those on the motorway who have accidents on the motorway are referred to the General Hospital? What are you going to do to upgrade the Tema General Hospital, which has become a death trap? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I believe that in terms of the policy of the infrastructure and building of hospitals and health facilities across the country, one is fully aware of the fact that without the right health centers, CHIPS compound health centers, clinics, before you even get to the district type hospitals in the areas, a lot of pressure is then put on certain hospitals because you don't have other referral hospitals in the area. Tema General Hospital tends to fall into one of those brackets. And I am aware that there's also a new hospital being earmarked in the Tema area, I believe.
Where?
I stand to be corrected, but I believe
maybe you can do your checks, but
okay.
Not to my attention.
It may be a health center, but I'll look at it. All I will say is that the pressures on Tema have been noted, and I am aware that you actually raised this at the last vetting committee of my predecessor. Once I'm given the nod, or if I'm given the nod by this august house, it is something that I intend to look into and to see how we can rehabilitate. Most of the time, we get caught up in the building of new structures, but it is correct that some structures have the space and just need to be rehabilitated with one or two structures added, and I believe that that is the situation with Tema. We quickly were able to put up an Ebola center attached to the Tema General Hospital. I believe that a little bit more effort should be able to see us put up the necessary things that are required for that hospital. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Honorable Mrs. Osla Edufu.
Thank you,
Ekufu, not Edufu.
Ekufu.
Ekufu. Thank
No, no, no. Congratulations, Mr. Segbefia. The last time we met was under very happy circumstances. When I shall explain. When we were co-hosts at one of the topsy-turvy programs in Joy FM. So we had a lot of fun together and helped dispel a lot of myths that as political opponents, we were enemies and at each other's throats. So it's nice to see you in this chair.
Thank you.
The central medical stores were recently in the news, having been destroyed by fire, allegedly to cover up some discrepancies in the goods being stored there. Let me just put it that way. I'd like to know what the status of investigations into the cause of the fire and what is being done to preserve the state's investment in the health sector across the country to forestall any such incident occurring.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The burning of the central medical stores is definitely an unfortunate incident in the annals of our history. It is also correct that an investigation has been carried out, and I believe that a report was only made available, or we told it's available. I heard about it, I think, on Friday. So I believe that it will go through the necessary process. I wouldn't have had access to it at this stage. It will go through the process and then be sent to the powers that be. If I'm given the nod by this august house, no doubt it will be one of the main things that I have to tackle the moment I am in office. And I believe that all the recommendations and issues that will come out of it would be adhered to by myself in tandem in ensuring that the integrity and the sanctity of the way in which government is perceived with dealing with issues of this nature is brought to the fore. At the moment, as you yourself indicated, and I was glad to see the legal balance in it when you said allegedly, let's wait for the report and see what comes out of it. Thank you very much.
I would also like to give you this opportunity to clear the air about some statements that you reportedly made at the height of the Woyome controversy. And this is in light of your own CV, which indicates that you have excellent communication skills and excellent analytical and commercial acumen skills with a critical mind, and the emphasis is on common sense approach to problem solving. In light of the Supreme Court ruling, and in view of your skills, which you have highlighted here, do you regret using your excellent communication skills to defend Woyome with the benefit of hindsight?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Unfortunately, my colleague is fully aware that the matter of Woyome has been appealed. And therefore, technically, as a lawyer myself, I believe that the matter is sub judice. And therefore, I'm not in a position to comment. I would really love to. And one day, I will come out and explain myself. But I would defer to the law of the land at the moment. Once this matter is over, I'm sure you hear about it, but at the moment, I do not want to make any further comments on the issue.
I am referring to the Supreme Court ruling last year, which is not subject to appeal, in which the Supreme Court indicated that it was, to quote Justice Jones-Doche, to create, loot, and share, and in which the Supreme Court directed that the monies be refunded. That is not subject to appeal. I'm not talking about the criminal matter.
Can I indicate that the judgments are linked, and my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, and I stand to be corrected, my understanding is that the Waterville case and possibly the Isophoton case have been sent to the International Tribunal for some interpretation. If that is correct, then with the little law that I know, I believe that it still remains sub judice, and therefore I'll read.
Honorable members, I think he's right. It's before the International Court of Arbitration. Before the International Court of Arbitration. Please. It is before the International Court of Arbitration, so as much as possible, let's just, Yes, Honorable Queensta Sawyer.
Mr. Chairman, may I just indicate that if a matter is before any court, Parliament is not precluded from making any comment on it. I think it rests on the laps of the person in charge. In this particular case, the chairman. If the chairman directs that we cannot make any further comment, so be that. But Parliament is not precluded in pronouncing on that or discussing that matter. Mr. Chairman, with respect.
Well, but I think that standing orders make certain provisions. I think it's Order 93. To the extent that it's likely to influence the outcome, yes. So I think that let us just let sleeping dogs lie. And that is so. That is so. That is my rule. That is my rule. Yes, Honorable Queensta Sawyer, it's your turn. Order. Honorable Queensta Sawyer, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations, my brother.
Thank you.
He's my brother. I want to go back to the National Health Insurance Scheme. Some people are seriously advocating for an increase in the health insurance premium. Do you consider that as the best option so we can move the scheme forward? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What is clear with time, and as I said, it was indicated way back when the review was done in 2005, is that a revenue stream of the national health insurance will have to be looked at and possibly increased. But without going through the process and going through a proper review with necessary consultation done as to where the source of the money will come from, it's not one that I would like to even begin to speculate on at this stage. What I do promise is that if this august house gives me the nod, I will definitely be at the forefront of championing a position which will come to a cessation of looking for funds and try and bring this whole issue of getting extra money for the national health insurance to an end based on a sustainable process. I'm also aware that staff of the National Health Insurance, along with members of the Ministry of Health, have visited a number of countries to look at how they have dealt with difficulties of this nature when they were at this stage in their process. And so there's a lot that I will be able to glean and learn from if I'm given the nod by this august house. Thank you.
Honorable Segbefia, you'd agree with me that last year, cholera claimed a lot of lives in Ghana. If given the nod, what new proposals would you put in place to curb it this year, God willing?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to strengthen intersectorial, intergrouping task forces or groups because one of the issues that we have learned from what happened in this unfortunate epidemic, and for which I will start off by saying that condolences to all those who lost their lives, or family members who lost their lives as a result of it. But one of the issues that we have to look at is how, as a team, people work together. The preventative part of dealing with cholera is key. Sanitation, key. Local government plays a part. AMA, a much closer part under the local government. Ministry of Health has its part to play. Ministry of Education, in terms of education within schools, etc., have a part to play. You have to look at the holistic issue. And one of the things that, if I'm given the nod, I will try to come back to, is that when we had the unfortunate situation of the scare, which still exists to a point, of Ebola, we were all quick to implement situations where, even in our ministries, departments, and agencies, we had sanitizers, we had water to wash our hands. As people have begun to feel a little bit more comfortable, you notice that all this has begun to whittle down. I will try and champion the cause where we keep that level of sanitation, because it's not only about Ebola. Cholera has a part to play in it. It's about many diseases which are communicable diseases, which deal directly with hygiene. So that is what I intend to do. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Dr. Atu Arthur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. A follow-up from the earlier question on health insurance.
It's not a supplementary. It's a main question.
That's okay. Mr. Chairman, Honorable Segbefia was involved in the launch of NDC party manifesto. Regarding the national health insurance, you touted one-time premium. What has happened to it? And given the nod, would you want to explore the one-time premium?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The one-time premium was touted in the 2008 manifesto. It does not feature in the 2012 manifesto. The reason for that was that within 2008 and 2009, between that period, a full review, a committee was set up with all major stakeholders to look at the implementation of that scheme. The outcome of that was that it was not the appropriate time to actually deal with the one-time premium. As a listening government, we took the view that we would not implement it, and that is what has happened currently. I do not believe, and because of that, it was not something that was put into the 2012 manifesto. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to my second question, but I believe that then NDC should have apologized to Ghana.
Please ask your question. Please ask your question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, but may I ask whether the honorable nominee still believes that that aspect of your manifesto is still implementable?
I think that it's
Order. Honorable nominee, please answer the question.
It's not part of our manifesto. If you're talking about what the issue was in the past, all I would say is that there are financial constraints at the moment with the national health insurance. And therefore, to look at it holistically, even if you wanted to do it, the kind of premium you'd have to place on it would make it not feasible. So it may be something that you may be able to do in the future. But currently, going into that ministry, it is not something I'm looking to champion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm using his own words that it's not feasible. What feasibility studies were conducted into it before you came up with that determination?
Mr. Chairman, There is always a difference, I would say, in a manifesto situation and when you are actually in the chair. And it is correct that we looked at all the available issues at the time before that commitment was made for the 2008 manifesto. But it is also correct that various things were brought to our notice subsequently. It is also correct that we did the right thing by saying, it's not a case of we've done a promise, so just go ahead. No. We put stakeholders together and said, look, now let's look at this thing with all the data that we have. Is it feasible? And the answer that came back was no. As a listening government, we took that course of action. Thank you.
So, Chairman, my second question. Oh, I had only one. So, Mr. Chairman, according to WHO 2014 report, the registration of all births and all deaths, and even the causes of the deaths are very important. They are most valuable assets a country can have. And you agree with me, it affects the area of training, medicine that is manufactured or imported, fertility rate and all others. Unfortunately, in Ghana, the GHS 2011 report states that almost 30% of health deliveries are supervised by TBAs, traditional birth attendants. You agree with me that most of them are illiterate. It tells you that not all births are registered. Not all deaths are registered. Not all causes of deaths are known. Given the nod, what will your ministry do to ensure that this 2014 WHO report, the recommendation, will be functional in Ghana?
Mr. Chairman, the whole area of registration of births and deaths has a direct relation as well with the National Health Insurance Scheme. Because the National Health Insurance Scheme actually has one of the best data sources in terms of people and their health situation in this country, ever since they introduced the biometric situation. And as more and more people get on it, the ability to know more and more about what they are doing and what happens with regard to the birth situations will be improved. The issue of births and deaths also has to do with traditional norms, the fact that, and for me the baseline is that the key to it is the CHIPS compound. Because in our traditional areas, if you have the community health nurses who actually become part and parcel of the community, they begin to be able to perform the roles that are required, especially at the time of birth. In some traditional areas, some mothers are not even allowed to leave the birth area with the child for a number of weeks. But at least if you have a health nurse who is aware, they can visit. And if there are issues of an emergency, they know how to make contact with the necessary ambulance service or whatever to move the mother and child into a position of care and safety if the need is required. So the emphasis for me is on the CHIPS compounds and the health clinics, or the health centers, because they are what will eventually begin to lower the rates of mortality rate for mothers, maternal mortality rate, and the infant mortality rate. It's an area which we are struggling to meet the MGDA targets 4 and 5, but we believe that we've come a long way, and with a little extra push, we should be able to meet them much earlier than the 2030 deadline that has been forecast at the rate at which we are going. But the key is the CHIPS compounds and the health clinics. Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Kujetu Ablakwa.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and congratulations once again, Honorable Alex Segbefia. My first question has to do with your background as a lawyer. You were called to the UK by 1988. You seem to have had quite an illustrious legal career. My question has to do with growing reports of medical negligence, some surrogate mothers who say that their rights are being violated, the whole issues around surrogacy and its legal implications, and all these matters that has to do with the rights of medical practitioners and also patients on the other hand, so that we can improve on health delivery, we can ensure that at all times rights are being respected and that the delivery of health care is properly being done within a legal context that, as it were, respects the rights of all. How do you intend to bring this rich legal experience of yours to improve on our current regime, medical legal regime, as per all the issues that are coming up in recent times, bordering on medical negligence, bordering on surrogacy and other matters that have to do with the law?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The issue of law in Ghana is that actually we have a lot of laws, and many of them are not being applied. But there's also the need to understand that when law is passed, ever so often there's the need for amendments. If not so, the law can become obsolete or cannot be workable. And that is an area which has to be looked at across board, not just in the health sector, across board in the country. Because you tend to find that the world is moving faster pace, computers, etc., etc. And our ability to legislate and also amend our laws is not keeping up with the pace. And you're struggling to sometimes use legislation which is not fit for purpose, creating the situation where you have interesting issues and debates arising in our courts of law. So it is, once if I'm given the nod, one of the things I would like to look at is to find out what the current situation is. There's an insurance aspect to this, because actually for issues of medical negligence, there should be insurance on all doctors, on all health institutions, so that if there is an issue that arises, the insurance can pay, and actually it means that people become more diligent in the activities they do when they are working in the workplace. We have a long way to go in this area, but at least the discussions have begun, and if I'm given the nod, it's something that I would like to definitely look into and see how far we are and progress it even further than exists at the moment within the health sector. Thank you.
Honourable Member, let your prefacing be as brief as possible. The foundation I'm talking about.
Certainly, sure, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, my final question has to do with the latest indices. It will appear that life expectancy has gone up. Infant mortality has also declined quite drastically, we are told. Maternal mortality also, we are told, has improved. Are you conversant with these latest indices? And what will you say accounts for these positive developments, and how do you intend to maintain this trajectory for the benefit of our people?
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The history of, or credits can be given to some of these figures because of the National Health Insurance Scheme. In the past, when we all had to pay for everything, the deprived, the underage, and the overaged wouldn't even go to the hospital because they couldn't afford it. It was simple as that. So with the advent of the National Health Insurance, it has meant that more people have been willing to access healthcare who would not have even bothered and gone possibly to people who would not be in a position to properly look after them. So we can give some credit there, and that is why then there's a need to make sure that we deal with the national health insurance in a way which will continue to deal with the lives of our deprived and poor people, because they have been the ultimate beneficiaries of this scheme. The